See a lot of information out there in the news media, particularly the social media world about all things Social Security fraud, Medicaid fraud, Medicare fraud, and all the rest of it. So I figured we'd talk about that today, and I give you some actual facts from the inside. If you're new to my channel, my name is Ed Weir. I ran the third business Social Security office in the country, and I've prosecuted quite a few fraud cases, and I kind of know what they look like from the inside. You always hear stories out there that, I knew a guy that knew a guy that had a brother who had a sister twice removed that was doing this, and therefore Social Security needs to be shut down because it's full of fraud, waste, and abuse. Well, it's not necessarily the case, and we'll get into that today. This is also a live Q&A. Looks like I've already got a ton of questions up here. I'll try to get to as many as possible, but let's talk about actual fraud, waste, and abuse in Social Security. What is the face of fraud, waste, and abuse in Social Security? Well, kind of look in the mirror. It's everybody. Because what they are talking about when the people in social media, and you know who I'm talking about, when they talk about fraud, waste, and abuse for Social Security, they quote these numbers about however many billions of dollars of improper payments. And an improper payment is not necessarily fraud, waste, and abuse. So what do I mean, look in the mirror? Well, if you're a regular to my channel, you know that I recommend sometimes, I guess, fraud, waste, and abuse in these improper payments. And what am I talking about? Well, strategic overpayment. Okay, so regular viewers know about this. If you're in early retirement, so between 60, or if you're receiving survivor benefits, you can start survivor benefits at 60, and all the way up until you're 66, 67, you have a limit to how much you can make. This year it's the $23,400. So Social Security holds back $1 for every $2 you go over that amount. The year you reach your full retirement age, it increases. This year at $62,160, and they hold back $1 for every $3 you go over. Okay, so strategic overpayment is, some people say, well, I'm going to make $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000 over that amount. So what do I do? Do I go ahead and contact Social Security and tell them I'm going to make that amount? And I've always recommended you can if you want, but you can be part of that fraud, waste, and abuse, which is not really fraud, waste, and abuse. It's just an improper payment, an overpayment, because you're choosing to get paid a little bit more and deal with the consequences. And what are the consequences? No big deal. Because a lot of people, they don't know exactly, okay, am I going to be over 23,400? I won't know until, October, November, December. It, depends on the holiday season. Am I going to work extra hours or whatever the case may be? And should I sit on the phone for 3 hours at Social Security and tell them I'm going to be $1,000 over, and I don't know if I'm going to be $1,000 over? So I just tell people, you can call them, sit on the phone. But the problem is, if something happens and they don't do it right, or if you submit that work report this year, they're going to assume you're going to make the same amount next year, and then they're going to hold back like January, February check because you're going to be overpaid. So, and you're say, well, I'm going to reduce my work, so then you'll have to call back again. So I tell people, just you can let it ride. You can let it ride. Just don't call Social Security. Work, do what you got to do, and then at the end of the year, the beginning of the next year, when you file your taxes, your W-2 gets notified to Social Security. Social Security looks at it and says, hey, Bob, Jane, you made $1,000 too much. That means we're going to hold back $1, so you owe us $500. No harm, no foul. So, you just get the little letter and it says, pay us the $500, and you write a check and pay them the $500. Or you call them up and say, hey, can I set up a payment plan? Now you can set up a payment plan for 60 months. There's no interest, so you can do it that way too. So there's a lot of people that do that strategic overpayment, and that counts as an improper payment for Social Security. And that's where we get billions of dollars of overpayments to Social Security. But if you actually look at the numbers, Social Security is pretty awesome in terms of overpayment. So a July 2024 report by the OIG, Office of the Inspector General, determined that between fiscal 2015 and 2022, only about 0.84% of Social Security Administration payouts were deemed improper. And again, how many percent of that was just people saying, I'll let it ride? However, that period, Social Security distributed a whopping $8.6 trillion, so 0.84%. That's a pretty good error rate. If you're going to school and you get a 0.84% error rate, that means you've passed with flying colors, A plus, right? So that small percentage is $71.8 billion. So when you're giving out that much money, yeah, 0.84%, that's a lot of money, 71 billion. But again, a very small percentage of improper payments, and a lot of those are just strategic overpayments, and I'll get into some of the other ones here. Those improper payments are often clawed back as Social Security identifies them. The audit said that at the end of the fiscal year 2023, the SSA recovered 4.9 billion in overpayments, though it uncollected overpayment balance at 23 billion. So again, those are people just doing, we're not able to collect right now. Or they're just go ahead and do the payment plans. So all that money hasn't been fully clawed back yet. Is there fraud, waste, and abuse? Absolutely. But in terms of early retirement, there's a lot of people that have overpayments for that. There are people that for disability. One of the reasons so many people get paid incorrectly on disability is because of the way Congress set up the regulations. Social Security just administers the regulations that Congress, established. And that's what's crazy. Congress says, oh, you're doing this, you're making it all more complicated. Well, we're not the ones that set the rules and regulations. We're just following your orders. So for disability, there's the trial work period, there's the substantial gainful activity, there are IRWIs, they are the EP, the extended period of eligibility, there's EXRs, expedited reinstatements, there's a different a number for people that are blind. It's different for the trial work period, SGA, the SGA number is not, so the whole thing is way, way too complicated. And actually, I am in the middle of producing a calculator that will help people on disability. I'm doing 4 calculators right now, so make sure you subscribe, like, and within the next few days, hopefully, I'm going to put out a test to y'all, my regular viewers, and I'll send you the link. And there's 4 calculators I want you to check. One is when you should start your benefits. If you're currently receiving benefits, is your check correct? Working while receiving retirement benefits and working while receiving disability benefits. So it's a little calculator that walks you through the process, and hopefully we can make reduce these overpayments considerably, make your life a lot easier. So make sure you subscribe and like, and hopefully within the next week I'll come up with those. I'll put them in the little chat or something. I'll figure out a way to get the link to you so y'all can check it out and give me suggestions, and kind of y'all be my beta testers. So look for that coming here very, 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 very soon. I'm sure there's going to be all kinds of little technical little formatting issues, but the calculators themselves are accurate. All right. So disability, a lot of people they don't know the disability rules. And are there people getting disability when they shouldn't? Yes. They get they become better because of medications or operations, and now they're able to work, or they're actually working and they're working under the table or something like that. Yes, Social Security gets reports like that. And one of the problems with Doge is they're looking for fraud, waste, and abuse, and we all agree, Social Security is very, 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 very vigilant in finding fraud, waste, and abuse. They can't find it all, obviously. I'm sure everybody has a brother that has a sister twice removed, whose cousin, whatever. But Doge is completely looking at the wrong things, because Elon Musk and Doge, want to find something that they can say, here's $20 billion, because, they're trying to, pay for their tax cuts. They're trying to find big money. And that's not possible at Social Security, really. Now, I can't see it. What is fraud, waste, and abuse at Social Security are these individual cases. These people on disability that are not supposed to be on disability, these one-on-one cases, these individual cases. And how do you get that fraud? Well, you do what Social Security does. You monitor work reports. If you get any tips of people working that are on disability, you send out the forms. You are allowed to work while you're receiving disability. So a lot of the notifications we got were ex-spouses or boyfriend or girlfriend or something like that, trying to drop the dime on their ex and try to cause them problems. So we would contact that person and say, hey, we heard you're working. And they say, yeah, yes, I am working. I'm working under the substantial gainful activity, so I'm allowed to work. You're right. Okay. All right. So it looks like your ex-girlfriend doesn't like you anymore. So, and that's a lot of the case. In some of those we did, they were definitely working. I can tell you a few: famous referee, boxing referee, a doctor that works for the VA. Yeah. So we prosecuted a lot of people, restitution, put some people in jail. So that happens all the time. But those are one-on-one. That's, 10, 20, 30, $100,000. And you see those in the newspaper all the time. Local man is, thrown in jail. Local woman is, restitution, put in, probation for fraud and stuff like that. You see that all the time. But Elon Musk and Doge, that doesn't interest them. Those one-on-one cases, that doesn't interest them. It's not sexy. It's not, it's not billions of dollars. They want 20 million, dead people are receiving Social Security benefits. Yeah, but that's been proven to be incorrect. And now they're moving on, since they can't find this giant fraud thing. They're trying to figure out another way to attack Social Security, because they ultimately want to privatize Social Security. And the other thing is this, illegal immigrants are receiving, what millions of immigrants are receiving Social Security cards. Yes. Like, for example, a guy named Elon Musk was a non-citizen. He got a Social Security card when he moved here from Canada. The other guy that's on the news all the time, Elon Musk's partner in this, used to work at Tesla. He was saying that, these non-citizens are getting Social Security cards. Yes, like your mother and father and your brothers and sisters, you admitted that your brothers and sisters got, Social Security cards. So yeah, non-citizens can get Social Security cards. Non-citizens that are not in the country legally cannot. And they definitely cannot get benefits. There are some exceptions. If the non-citizen has doesn't, is not here legally, they can kind of get a Social Security card, but just so they can be the representative payee for their U.S. citizen child or something like that. Very, 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 very limited, but they don't get benefits themselves. But if they have a child that's a U.S. citizen, then that child, if the child is disabled, then they're allowed to. So these undocumented immigrants are not eligible for Medicaid. So the guy, Elon Musk's partner in crime on this one, went on there and said, millions of people that we have found, millions of people of these immigrants are receiving Medicaid. And that is completely incorrect. And then he went on the news a few days later. And see, that's why your parents always tell you it's always better to tell the truth, because if you don't, then it's hard to remember the stories you make up. So the guy went on the news a couple of days later, and then he changes it and says 1.3 million people are on, undocumented illegals are on Medicare. Wait a second, you said it was Medicaid. Now it's Medicare. Which is it? So that's why your parents always say, just tell the truth. It's easier to remember, right? So undocumented immigrants are not eligible. Before I worked at Social Security, I worked for the Department of Social Services in my state, and that's where you do Medicaid, and they are not eligible. Undocumented immigrants are not eligible to enroll in federally funded coverage, including Medicaid, CHIP, that's the Child Health Insurance Program, Medicare, or to purchase ACA Marketplace. And one of the things people say, well, I know this one guy was an asylee or Cuban entrant or whatever. If they are legally allowed in this country, then they are legally allowed in this country. You may disagree with asylees or refugees coming from whatever country, but Congress has said that they are legal in this country as asylees or conditional entrant granted before 1980, or battered non-citizen spouses or parents or whatever. These are categories that Congress have set up that said, okay, these particular people, they are allowed to be in this country. And because they're allowed to be in this country, then Social Security has to follow the law that Congress made. So they become qualified immigrants. But despite having lower income household incomes, immigrants under 65 are less likely to be covered by Medicaid than their U.S.-born counterparts. So immigrants, again, these are legal immigrants, people that are in the country legally, less use of Medicaid, even though they're low income. Emergency Medicaid. So you hear about this all the time. If somebody is in this country legally, picking our strawberries or whatever the case may be, working at restaurants, and they're not in the country legally, number one, should go after the owner of that place, the owner of the business that hired them, right? But anyway, but if something happens to them, we like to think we are good people, and if they go to a hospital and they're just have a car accident or something like that, the Hippocratic Oath, doctors have to take care of them, the hospitals have to take care of them, and rather than the hospital themselves having to foot the bill, we in this country have decided the federal government is going to go ahead and pay for that. But that is less than 1% of total Medicaid spending. Less than 1% goes. So 0.4% of total Medicaid spending goes to those emergency cases. So very, very sliver. So you can disagree with that. If someone, gets in a terrible car accident, and they go to a hospital, you may say, well, we need to check your legal status in this country before, we, resuscitate you. I don't think that's going to work. States have expanded coverage, lawfully present immigrant children and pregnant, and some have fully state-funded coverage for immigrants. So again, states sometimes do a little bit different things, but that's not Medicaid itself. Again, these are, immigrants in terms of legal immigrants. So, and immigrants use less health care and have lower health care costs than people born in the United States. So again, legal. We're talking about legal immigrants. Most of our families, unless you're Native American, well, I guess Native Americans originally are immigrants as well from, over the Bering Strait, but a few more years than the Mayflower, Jamestown, and all that. So, all right. So that's kind of the fraud, waste, and abuse. Is just, look in the mirror, your next door neighbor, again, it's not fraud, waste, and abuse. It's just strategic overpayments, not knowing how to deal with the disability thing. And yes, there are. And there's another thing they're talking about. I keep saying these. There was the Doge interview. I keep saying that they misspeak. They have misspoken about something. But yeah, it's. I hate using the L word because I have to prove intent for the L word. But during the Doge interview, one of the guys said that 40% of calls coming into Social Security are fraudulent, trying to change direct deposit. Like there's giant phone banks somewhere in the world that people call into Social Security by the millions every day and try to change direct deposit. And then Elon Musk has repeated that, but that is 100% untrue. 40% of direct deposit. So we're talking about direct deposit fraud, people trying to change your direct deposit. 40% of that, only the direct deposit part, 40% of that, they use the phone to try to change direct deposit. So it's not 40% of calls coming in. So it's probably less than, 0.5% of the number of calls coming into Social Security are that category. So again, for people that are build rockets and build cars, electric cars and stuff like that, you think they'd be a little bit good at fractions and math and percentages, but they don't seem. I think it's just we know why they want to push an agenda. So, all right. So if you got any other questions on this, all right, we already got some interesting comments here. So let's get to some of these comments. And I remember this Q&A is sponsored by Chapter Medicare. If you need any help with all things Medicare, make sure you reach out to them. And okay, here's a good one. This is a complete lie. Fraud doesn't exist in these numbers. They are stealing everyone's money. Lies, lies, and more lies. Okay, you're kind of contradicting yourself. This is a complete lie. Fraud doesn't exist in these. They're stealing everybody. Lie, lie. Okay, so you're talking about the people that are, telling these incorrect stories. Okay, all right, all right. If you want to use the L word, but yeah. Anyway. Hello, I applied online for Social Security benefits earlier today and got a confirmation number in a section that said what you need to do next. Submit the following documents. And then it came up blank. Yes. Then you don't need anything. Yeah, they need to change the language on that. And the letters that used to go out, it had that, and because I've done this a few 100,000 times. In the old letters that went out, it had that the submit the following documents, colons, and then that was at the very bottom of the page, and then at the very top of the page, and it said your birth certificate, marriage certificate, W-2, and stuff like that, and that's where the staple part was, and people used to miss that and stuff. So, yeah, If so, you got that online. So if that's blank after that, you don't need anything. Um, so if you just filed for regular retirement benefits, you don't need your W-2 for 2024. That's automatic. And sometimes it says that, but you don't really need it. It's notified automatic through the system through the IRS. So Joe, you were probably born in the United States, and therefore you don't need to provide your birth certificate because you were born in the United States. And then when you or your parents filed for your Social Security number originally, it shows on what's called the numident. It shows that you were registered in the United States and you were born in the United States. So they use that as proof. Before, we used to have to see everybody's birth certificate, but they changed that a few years ago. And it's like, hey, if we already saw your birth certificate when you're born, we don't need to do it again, unless there's something strange. Unless the date of birth is a little bit wrong, or your spelling your name is wrong, or something like that. But Joe, it sounds like everything on yours is good, so you don't need to do anything. If there's anything that the Social Security employee that is looking at your case needs, they will reach out to you. So if you get a call from Social Security, make sure you pick it up, and then they might say, "Hey, Joe, looks like everything is good, but we noticed that in 1982 and 1983, it showed zero earnings for those years. Are we missing something there?" And you just say, "Oh no, I was on vacation for a couple of years or something." So, yep, no issue whatsoever. Let's see here. State of Alaska didn't pay FICA. I get my Social Security, but not his because my amount is higher. But would I be eligible for the 6,000? We were married 36 years. Thanks for your help. You're welcome. Yeah. So in some states, local city governments, they did not pay into the Social Security part of FICA, and that's what the whole windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset. But that's old news. The Social Security Fairness Act that Joe Biden signed into law, President Trump, approved it as well. He liked it. Politicians on both sides approved it. I didn't like it because I don't think it's fair to the other 97% of people, but it was a political decision. So anyway, people are receiving thousands of dollars in back pay all the way to January 2024. I did a video about this, and people, still write in there, "Ed, you're a fraud. I didn't get my $6,000 yet." And they didn't watch the video that said, well, it only goes to the 3,000 or the 3% of people that, worked in this, government jobs. I believe everybody should get it, but I lost that battle. So, if your benefit amount has been wept or GPO'd, then you just might get something. But if your benefit amount has never been affected by the WEP or the GPO, then this doesn't apply to you. You're one of the other 97% like me, because I even though I work for the federal government, I paid into FICA. Everybody that works in the federal government pretty much pays into FICA since the 1980s, politicians as well. But yeah, if your benefits weren't recalculated because of WEP GPO, then no, you are not part of that group, that 3%. So, Bunny, what happened at April 2nd court hearing that the judge requested Musk show up and bring proof as why he needs access to all Social Security personnel information? What was the outcome of the court hearing? I'm not sure. It's when you're the richest person in the world, do you really, so. And then you've got executive privilege possibly. So even though, I haven't heard anything about that yet, but I don't, maybe that's why he's stepping down, because he didn't want to go there. So and that's one of the scary things. They say, hey, we looked at all the Social Security records and we looked at Medicaid records. And if you're in Medicaid records, that means you can get into Medicare records and you can get into the Affordable Care Act, marketplace records and everything like that. So supposedly they have access to all of that. And they were able to find, 1.3 million, immigrants that were receiving Medicaid, which is completely BS. But they just kind of gave themselves away there a little bit and says, hey, yeah, we've got it. We've got access to everything. And, computer geniuses, one button, they can download it. In the future, the most important thing is information. And now they've got information on everybody and everything. Let's see. I don't think they said anything about shutting it down. I'm not sure what shutting it. I know the current commissioner, the acting commissioner of the Social Security Administration, said he was going to shut down Social Security. He had a little temper tantrum there, but Pat, hello, good doctor. Hey, hope all is well. God bless you and yours today and forever. Thank you. Keep up the good work. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Let's see, Dr. Ed, you read that Doge crashed the system, making it hard for log on. Yeah, during that Doge interview, Brett Baer, who really asked super softball questions, and he just, basically his questions are, how awesome are you guys? Oh yeah, you guys are. Yeah. One thing he did ask, which he didn't follow up, he let this guy get away with it. He says, yeah, the computer system's gone down 4 times in the last 10 days. Is the stuff y'all doing in there, was that the cause? And the guy, his answer was, oh, did I tell you about these 20 million, people that have Social Security numbers that haven't been closed out, that they're deceased? And it's like, okay, what does that have to do with anything So yeah, they're using this, millions of people millions of people that Social Security hasn't closed out. And he mentions, yeah, this has been around since 2008. And yes, it has been around since 2008, but no money was coming out of there. So why fix it when, it's just a waste of money to fix it. If they want to fix it now, regular viewers, I'm not going to repeat that because regular viewers to my channel know how that's a misdirection. Nia Miller. I was sent Medicare card. I'm 62, getting survivor benefits. Now I check with them and my date of birth is wrong. Am I eligible for Medicare? I have a disabled son that receives as well on his father. Okay. So yeah, if your date of birth is wrong, you definitely need to get that fixed. So what you do is you download an SS5, and that's an application for a Social Security card. And you're like, why do I need that? Because your date of birth is in the numident, and the numident gets changed with an SS5 Social Security card. That's where it all originates from. So yeah, if your date of birth is wrong, you're going to have a lot of problems, when you file your taxes, because the systems won't match up. So definitely get that fixed. But if you're 62, you should not be getting Medicare unless you are 62 receiving disabled benefits. And so you're receiving survivor benefits. So that might actually be it. And you probably say, no, I'm not receiving disabled benefits. I'm receiving survivor benefits. You just might be receiving disabled widow's benefits, called DWIB. You were married to someone that passed away, and you were disabled between the ages of 50 and 59. So you're eligible for disabled widow's benefits, and that's a disability program. And then when you're on disability, SSDI with Social Security, after 2 years, you're eligible for Medicare. So, you might just very well be eligible for Medicare, but I would definitely, find out what's going on with your date of birth and get that corrected. Okay, your disabled son is receiving disabled adult child benefits. Same type of situation. He's receiving disability benefits, and after 2 years of being on disability, your son is also eligible for Medicare. So if you need help with all that, finding out what the difference between A and B for you and your son, and whether you definitely need to get some other coverage unless you're independently wealthy. You need to get some type of Medicare supplement or Medicare Advantage plan. So reach out to Chapter. Unfortunately, they're in a 3-day training seminar. You can call them up, or probably wait until Thursday when they're all back. But they're doing some training with all the new changes. So give them a call in a couple of days, and they'll be able to help you out. Catalina, I don't think he answers questions in the live chat when he is speaking informatively on a topic. When I'm talking about the original topic in the first 5 or 10 minutes, I don't answer questions. And so, but I'm answering questions now. They're scam artists. They have an agenda, and they're looking for alternative facts to support their narrative. Give credit to Social Security Administration. Social Security Administration has passed all of their audits with flying colors for the last 31 years. Outside audits by Ernst & Young. We used to have Ernst & Young come into our office and audit us and stuff, and we always passed with flying colors. But if they're really looking for fraud, waste, and abuse, the target is Department of Defense. They haven't passed an audit for years. Except there's one part of the Department of Defense that recently passed an audit. And I'll give you three guesses, and the first two don't count, right? As they used to say. It was the United States Marine Corps. They passed an audit the first time. So Marine Corps. Of course they did. All right, let's see what else here. That part, shouted out from the roof, Dr. Ed. Oh, okay. Thank you. All right. Be nice to be nice. Sorry to hear that they're doing random reviews, but we'll be okay. So it looks like someone's helping each other out, making someone else feel nice about their issues they're going through, and you guys are awesome like that. I appreciate it. One of the things I'm going to be doing on my new website I'm coming out with is this one might take a little bit longer, and I'm definitely going to need y'all's help. I'm going to have a resource in there that helps people that are kind of having a hard time struggling, and state by state, area by area. So when you type in your state, it says, hey, in your particular state, if you're struggling, here's food banks, here's a place you can get electrical help, here's a place, maybe that can help you out, fix your house if you need to, weatherproof, all these different programs locally that might be able to help you out. So that's going to be part of my new website. But that's definitely something I need y'all's help on, to go through it and say, hey, Ed, here's something you need to add. And so we'll make an awesome kind of, resource for people. I was watching another channel that many people are having issues today, but after a few minutes went good. So maybe they're doing some audit today on some accounts. Yeah. The online system, I always try to be fair. You know, right now, because of all the craziness with all things Social Security, and this is one of the things I recommend too, is go into your Social Security account, the mysocialsecurity.gov, go into there and download everything. The statement, your earnings record, how much you're getting paid, your benefit amount, all that kind of stuff. Download everything, print it off, have a hard copy. Because why? Because Doge is talking about going in there and rewriting Social Security, updating the computer system, which Social Security has been begging for decades from Congress. So we need to update the system, but Congress has always said no. But now they're going to do it, but they're going to do it on a crazy schedule. They're talking about weeks or months or something like that. And Social Security always said, hey, this is a big project. This is one of the biggest databases in the world. It's going to take 5 years or so to do it right. Because hundreds of millions of people, it will affect their lives. And if we do something wrong, checks might not go out and stuff. So we want to make sure we do it slow, methodically, and correctly. But that's not how it's being done. They're just going to go in there and if it breaks, and if you got $500 billion, you don't, or if you're the Commerce Secretary's mother-in-law, you don't care if you get your check this month or 2 months. You just wait for it. But people can't. So it's important that they do it right, but we shall see. Romeo, everything will be perfect. Stop listening to these people. They going to keep feeding you a negative and positive comment so you can keep coming today page so they can get paid. Okay. All righty. Everyone, remember you can select a trolls icon and set them to block. They will be wonderfully disappear. Oh, okay. All right. We got some trolls on here today. Yeah. All right. Is there an age when you can work all the hours you can or want and not have to have your Social Security docked at $1 for every $2 made over? Yeah, that's one of the things my new calculator is going to do, is tell you all about that. Working in $1 and $2 and the difference between a monthly earnings limit, and an annual earnings limit. But VDOWR, yes. When you hit your full retirement age, you can go back to making $1 billion a month, and it doesn't affect your Social Security check anymore. So, yep. Once you hit your full retirement age, no more earnings limit whatsoever. Let's see. If you tell a lie you don't remember, then you tell another lie to get out of the lie you told. So if you never lie, you have nothing to worry about. There we go. I agree 100%. That's why it's always good. Our parents were always right? Native Americans did not code over on anything. Burials and DNA have established us at 25, 40,000. We are not immigrants. All right. Pretty much all, yeah. But 20 or 40,000 years came over on the Bering Strait from Asia. So originally from. Yeah. Anyway, we'll get into that. There's a great, I forget the name of the Journey of Mankind. There's I don't know if it's still active, but type in Journey of Mankind. It has a great DNA analysis of the migration of peoples. So yeah, it's a great documentary, but there's also a website called Journey of Mankind. Check that out. It's pretty awesome. So I heard Elon wants to know if the money from his gold card is refundable. He wants out. Smash the FICA cap. Yeah. They're just giving the immigrants, what, a $5 million gold card. Became a platinum member. Thank you very much. You're awesome. Thank you. Ed, can you explain what would happen to SSI if SSA went private, if it's a welfare based? Ooh, yeah. That's the thing, when some countries do have a privatized, semi-privatized Social Security system, and it works for some countries. I don't, if it was done right, okay, but I don't really trust our politicians to do it right. So that's why I'm kind of against privatization of Social Security. But when it's privatized, then the thing about privatization is they if they're not making money, just like Medicare Advantage is privatized Medicare. If you have a Medicare Advantage plan, that's privatized Medicare. You don't have the same rights and everything as original Medicare. You're supposed to, but you don't often. So they have limited networks, and recently that's one of the reasons this Medicare season 2025 was so crazy, is because some of these Medicare Advantage companies decided to pull out of entire areas. One pulled out of the entire state of Missouri. So if they're not making money, and they might not make money on SSI people, they might decide, okay, we still are going to provide SSI to people in Oklahoma, but we're only going to provide one person in the entire state of Oklahoma to help everybody out on SSI. So yeah, that's the issue with kind of privatizing that type of, yeah. Dr. Weir, you've saved me 10 times in headaches. Oh, awesome. Good deal. The outcome was Elon didn't have proof, so he will have to find another way to snoop. Yeah. He, they started off that this is the greatest fraud in history. These 20 million people that are deceased over 150 years old receiving Social Security benefits, and then he kind of backtracked that and says, "Oh, okay, the database is incorrect." And so, again, Social Security knew about it, but it cost too much money to fix it, and it wouldn't save the taxpayer any money, so they just, and that hasn't got them any traction. So now they go back to the old, chestnut of it's the immigrants' fault. That's why Ed doesn't have any hair, because of all the immigrants. Okay, we answered. Let me get some other people here. BZ, again, I benefited from the Social Security Fairness Act. Nobody is giving me anything that I did not legitimately earn. What is unfair? My Social Security benefit be cut by 2/3 because of the WEP. It's not cut by 2/3 because of the WEP. If you're talking about 2/3, you're talking about the GPO, the government pension offset. And what's unfair is that now you are going to get a higher percentage than everybody else. See, Social Security benefits are calculated. There's bin points, and there's 90%, 32%, 15%. Low wage earners get a higher percentage. So if you're a low wage earner, you could get up to 90% return on what you paid into Social Security. If you're a high wage earner, you get 30% or 35%. So it's been like that since 1935. Congress, we as American people say, hey, when you go to retire, receive disability, if you've been a low wage worker, we're going to give you a higher percentage. And BZ, you're getting a higher percentage than everybody else. So if you're a teacher in Texas and you receive whatever percentage, and then a teacher in Texas or a teacher in Oklahoma, I gotta get that Texas Oklahoma battle going there. I went to high school in Texas, so half of my teachers went to Oklahoma and the half went to Texas. So I gotta get that battle going. So a teacher in Oklahoma that earned exactly the same amount as you, let's say, will only get a 45% return, but you are going to get a 65% return because of the Social Security Fairness Act. What's fair about that? That's unfair. So you should get the same percentage as that person in Oklahoma that paid the same exact amount. But Now you will receive a higher percentage. So is that fair? Why is that fair? Wow, 0.84% of 8.6 trillion is $72 billion in improper payments. That is certainly nothing to sneeze at. That is, I agree 100%. So, and again, a lot of that is clawed back. People pay that back and they get, other, and people come onto this channel all the time and, they say, hey, I just filed for benefits and, I'm 62 years old. I just filed for benefits. And then I got a letter that's saying I owe $10,000. What the heck is up with that? And what it is maybe when you were a child or your parents, you or your parents or whatever were receiving benefits and they got an overpayment. And then, that person passed away or something, whatever the case may be. And that overpayment sits on the record and it just sits there and sits there and sits there until someone comes to collect on that particular Social Security number. And then Social Security number sends and says, hey, congratulations on turning 62. Remember when you were 12 years old and you received benefits? Well, your parents didn't do it right. You got a $10,000 overpayment, so you have to pay us. Yeah. So Social Security, most time they, you can request a, overpayment waiver and something like that. Usually those are approved, but 72 billion is improper payments is a scam. Never would happen. Is a scam. Again, I just explained it, but I have high blood pressure and this drama could cause a stroke. Yeah, all the craziness out there. Let's see. He is not stepping down. They're just taking him out of the public limelight. He is working behind the scenes to cool people down. About the cooling people down, I'm not sure where Doge is still going to be in charge for the next few years of Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, the Affordable Care Act. Dr. Oz has just been confirmed in there. The new commissioner of Social Security is a Doge guy. I don't have enough Purple Butterfly. What's up, Purple? I don't have enough credits to file for Social Security on my own. Do I still have to file on my own record before I file under my ex-spouse's? Yes. You need, yes and no. You need to go through the process. So Social Security needs to take an application for you in order to have you in the system. That way Social Security knows that you're not insured for benefits on your own record. So it's just a technical thing that has to happen. The Social Security employee can't file a spouse claim until they've addressed the fact, whether you're insured or not, because maybe you're not insured right now. Maybe you've got like 39 quarters of coverage. So they take that application, deny it, and then file an application for you for spouse benefits. But then, next year you decide to go back to work and now your thing, that way you're in the system. So you do, but don't worry about it. It's just a technical type thing the Social Security employee has to do to address that. So, on SSD, Social Security Disability, Part B coming out of check now. Why? Sounds like you've been on disability for 2 years. Yeah, once you are on disability for 2 years, then Social Security automatically signs you up for Medicare Part A and Part B after 2 years. Medicare Part A, you have to keep that. It's zero premium anyway. But if you don't want Part B because you already have health insurance from work, yours or your spouse's, and that work, the group health plan has 20 or more employees, then you do not have to keep Part B. You can go ahead and refuse Part B. And then later on, when you stop receiving that health insurance from work, then you can sign up for Part B and there's no penalties whatsoever. But if you want to keep the Part B, remember, if you don't have that exception, the health insurance from current work, 20 employees or more, and you just refuse Part B, when you sign up for it later, you're going to get a penalty for the rest of your life. And that's one thing I'm going to be adding to my website is a calculator for that penalty. So, so if you're going to go ahead and keep that, now you need to figure out what you're going to do, cover all the gaps, because there's a bunch of gaps in original Medicare. The big one is Part B has a 20% co-insurance. So that means if you have to go to the doctor and they give you $100,000 Band-Aid, you have to pay $20,000 of that, 20%. So it's important that you get something else, either a Medicare supplement plan or a Medicare Advantage plan. Because you're on disability, probably in your state, you can't get a Medicare supplement plan. You probably can only get a Medicare Advantage plan, but there are a few states that you can. But some of the states you can, they're crazy expensive. So that's a state law that each state does that a little bit different. But you can reach out to Chapter here in a couple of days once they're back from training, and they'll walk you through the process. You're good. If you sign up, this week or next week, for a Medicare plan, it won't start until May 1st. So you've got plenty of time. Why did a one-time payment of $45 deposit on April 4th? Makes no sense. Reason. Yeah. Did you work last year? If you worked last year and that is one of your high 35 years of earnings, it sounds like Social Security, they got your earnings for last year, and then they looked at it and they said, hey, Shari, that's one of the high 35 years. They recalculated your benefits and you got an increase. And what it happens is if that calculation isn't done until like now, April, May, June, July, August, September, whatever the case may be, they will backdate it. So maybe that increased your benefit by $2 or $3 a month, but since they owed you January, February, March, April, they paid it all in one. So your monthly benefit might increase as well. And that's 100% automatic. So Ruby, what's up, Ruby? I turned 65 November 1st on SSDI. Do I need to go to the office to change over to Social Security office 3 months prior to this? No, you do not need to do anything. You're good. You're going to stay on disability as long as you're disabled. You're going to continue. You want to stay on disability. You're good. You don't switch over to retirement because you'll lose money. Once you hit your full retirement age, probably for you, 67 or so, then your benefits will switch from disability benefits to regular retirement benefits, but your check amount will stay the same. Medicare will stay the same. Everything is the same. One thing I do recommend is when you turn 65, and if you're on disability, is, as I just talked about the previous person, you probably have a Medicare Advantage plan, and that's probably the only one that was available in your state. But when you turn 65, you can get whatever you want. They can't deny you. They can't go through health underrating. They can't charge you more. So a few months before you turn 65, or you can do it, now if you want. You can't switch until 65, but you can start checking it out. So you can call Chapter in a few days here and just say, hey, I'm going to be turning 65. Do I really want a Medicare supplement plan? Do I want to switch from a Medicare Advantage to a Medicare supplement plan? What's the benefits? How much does it cost? And all that kind of stuff. And if it's not for you, it's not for you. So let's see. A lot of trolls here. All right. Will they find an excuse to privatize the United States Marine Corps? Yeah, they've been talking about that since the 80s. They said don't need a forward reactionary force, and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, and now with drones and all that other kind of stuff. I mean, come on, if you don't have a Marine Corps, how can you traumatize all those young teenagers? Right? That's why, as you see in my titles, I was called out by a lot of former Marines. There's no such thing as an ex-Marine. Once you're a Marine, then you're psychologically traumatized for the rest of your life, and not a former Marine. So yeah, so that's why I had to put scare quotes and former in there, because I got harassed by all the Marines and says, you're never a former ex, you're always messed up in the head. Can I request to go back on SSI, which is tax-free since I got hurt at prior retiring instead of being on Social Security retirement? Can I go back to Social Security disability? No, if you've already been switched over to retirement benefits, there's nobody in the country, nobody that receives Social Security disability after their full retirement age. So if your full retirement age was 66 or 67 or 65, you are no longer receiving disability benefits. And I'm sure a lot of people yelling, I'm 85 years old and I receive disability benefits. No, your disability benefits stopped 20 years ago. You are receiving retirement benefits now. It's, you probably didn't know the switch. It's a bureaucratic thing. They stop taking your money out of the Social Security Disability Trust Fund, start taking it out of the Retirement Trust Fund. Your check stays the same. But the key for you, the good stuff for you, is because you're no longer receiving disability benefits, there's no work limitations. after your full retirement age, you can make all the money in the world and it doesn't affect your retirement benefits. And there's no more CDRs. Yeah, no more CDRs. Part B isn't free. Beth, did I mistakenly say Part B was free? No, Part A, well, Part A is zero premium. Part B costs $185, sometimes more if you've high wage earner. But yeah, Part A is like the technical part. Part A is not free; it's zero premium. Why is it? Why can you say it's not free? Because you paid for that. All of those decades you paid into FICA, Medicare, you paid for it. Now you're just getting it at zero premium. And then there's deductibles and stuff. And even Medicare Advantage, it's actually illegal. A Medicare insurance agent can lose their license if they say a Medicare Advantage plan is free. That's how regulated Medicare Advantage plans are, even though, yeah, anyway, because they're not free. They're zero premium. A lot of them are zero premium, but they're pay as you go. Like if you go to the doctor, you have to pay maybe 30 or 50 bucks. If you go to a hospital, you might have to pay $100 or $200 a night or something like that. So yeah, they can't actually say, yeah, it's free, which I think is a very, very, very good law regulation. Marjorie, my daughter was laid off. She was parts manager for a large truck company. Her husband might be next. They bought a house 2 years ago. Oh, ouch. Anyone here happy with what's on? You might be next. Yeah, that's, wow, large truck company. Yeah, my dad was a Teamster. He drove an 18-wheeler for, 50, 60 years. So, yeah, that's a tough industry. So she was laid off, might be next. So if they're in their 60s, they can always file for Social Security benefits. Unfortunately, the Medicare won't start until they're 65. Oh, I was going to finish a thought on a previous person. Another person was on disability, and they said they received their Medicare card. And I wanted to finish one thought. If that person, if you are receiving the Affordable Care Act, Marketplace, Obamacare, whatever you want to call it, and you're saying, no, I don't want Medicare because I have the Affordable Care Act insurance and I like it, and it's, zero premium, zero out of pocket. Sorry, you have to get Medicare. Once you are eligible for Medicare, you no longer get those subsidies and the cost sharing of the Affordable Care Act. So you're like, I like my Affordable Care Act because it's zero premium every month. Well, that's because you're getting those advanced tax credits, premium tax credits. Once you're eligible for Medicare, you lose that. So it's important that, you get that fixed. You're a genuine soul. You stood true to God's teaching and helping your fellow man. Thank you. I appreciate that. And you are doing the same by sharing, and you like how I turned that around, sharing and liking and subscribing. That's how we teach all these stupid algorithms that this is important information that needs to get out there. So yeah, if anything you do like that, share, like, and please, yes. Dr. Ed, since the elected official in chief is not working to lower prices, but rather intentionally raising prices, would there be a stimulus into Social Security or a stimulus check? The same person will decide that. And it doesn't look like there's anything going on. And on that, the Doge dividend, that's pretty much, they stopped talking about that. But the whole tariffs thing, people don't realize that that's also going to hurt. It hurts, when most of the money you make, lower income people, middle income, most of the money you make goes into buying stuff, to live. So that's going to increase their prices, but it's even worse for those people on a fixed income, Social Security, is because when prices go up, that means inflation goes up. And then when the COLA comes out for next year, the COLA is going to be high. And you're like, oh, great, because 2.5% sucks. Well, that's 2.5% is good. That means inflation didn't go up very right. And the calculations, I think, could be fixed. But anyway, but now next year's COLA might be, like it was a couple of years at 8.7. The COLA could be a lot higher next year because prices have gone up. So the COLA is just partial compensation for the increased prices. It never covers them all. It's just a partial compensation. But the problem with the COLA going up is that means more money is going to come out of the Social Security Trust Fund to pay for that increased COLA. And therefore, the trust fund is going to be empty sooner. Right now, we're looking at 21% or 22% in 2034. So if the COLA goes up, then, substantially, then you're probably talking about 22, 23, 24% cut, and it might happen a year earlier. So stuff like this, it always hurts the people that can take the hit the least, So that's always the tragic part of all this. The people that can least afford it get hit the hardest. All right. Okay. I finally saw Captain Kirk there. Okay, let's tell him. Let's put him in the sandbox here. Well, okay, he's gone bye-bye. Yeah, he's just repeating the same old stuff, isn't he? Frank, hi Ed. Isn't the danger of privatizing Social Security is that when it becomes optional and some people may not want to contribute, or does it not work that way? Not sure. Yes, Frank, you are 100% right. That's one of the big things is Social Security will be around here for hundreds of years. Okay. So a lot of people miss this. They say, it's going bankrupt, it's insolvent. No, the trust fund, the savings is going down. Baby boomers put a bunch of money into savings so they could have it when, they retire. And so it's being, depleted. It's being used. Social Security will be around as long as there's workers. If we're all replaced by AI, then nobody works, then yeah, Social Security is gone. But, hopefully that doesn't happen. Social Security will always get money coming in because FICA taxes are mandatory. FICA Social Security will always come in as long as people are working and paying their taxes. So, but the problem is this much comes in and that much goes out. Right now, that's the fact. This much comes in, that much goes out. About 1.1 trillion comes in, 1.3 trillion goes out. What covers the difference? That Social Security Trust Fund. When the Social Security Trust Fund depletes, then all Social Security can do is pay what comes in. So this much comes in, Social Security can only pay out that much. They need to pay out that much, but they can't because they don't have a savings there. So they have to cut everybody's pay by 20, 21, 22, 23%. But Social Security will always be here. But the problem is the cuts. We can't afford, millions and millions and millions can't afford to have their benefit cut by 20, 23, 25%. So that's the issue. And when you move to a privatization thing and you say, well, young people, if you decide you can give half of that money and you can, put it in IRA and stuff like that, that means less money is going to come into FICA and therefore more cuts. So instead of 22%, then it might be, 30% or 40%. So, all right. I've got a couple more questions. We're about an hour, so I've got a few more questions here. Groovy. My Social Security has not changed either. We have not been given any info that anyone is depleted or downgraded. Fake news. Okay. You can look at the trustees report. You can look at the Congressional Budget Office. I've got it all in my, if you didn't know the trust fund is being depleted, then they've been talking about this for a few decades that we need to do something soon. And we've been, kicking the can down the road for the last 10 or 20 years. We knew this was coming and now it's finally coming. And okay, I already answered this question. Alan, Trump and his tariffs are his plan to grift more dollars from our trade partners. Does not benefit Americans at all. Yeah, it actually doesn't it doesn't take money from trade partners because trade partners don't pay it. Who pays tariffs? We pay tariffs. So I want to plan ahead to retire. Oh, I like the way this is starting already. And I can see my estimated benefit on my Social Security, but I won't be able to see what I will get from my ex-husband until I file. They won't tell me ahead. Yes, that is correct because they're not going to give out, personal information like that to someone until you prove your relationship, until you actually file and see if you're eligible for benefits on his record. And then once you are, then they'll tell you, they won't tell you that that the person is receiving this much money or anything like that, but they'll tell you how much your benefit is. And you can, after 5 seconds of calculation, you can figure it out for yourself how much. So they're kind of, Social Security is kind of cagey like that in terms of, giving out personal information. But, since your benefit amount is based on their benefit amount, you can do your own calculation and figure out how much that person is receiving. Well, that person could conceivably receive. So because your benefit amount is based on that person's PIA, their primary insurance amount, their benefit at their full retirement age. But so that person might not be receiving it yet, or might have filed at 62 or waiting until 70. So yeah, but that's has no relevance to your calculation. So all right. Yeah, we are over an hour here. Oh, got somebody donated the Senia. So you are too awesome. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. My coffee IV. I might actually do a beer today. I don't know. Let's see. Let me get one more question. Rachel, you are wrong. Social Security and Medicare gives rotten service, and young people see it coming. Bureaucrats are thieves. Young people want out of this racket. Well, bureaucrats, interesting spelling of bureaucrats, but anyway, yeah, and so you've fallen right for the trick. You've fallen for it. Politicians for decades have been trying to strangle Social Security, and because they know they can't privatize it outright. So what they've been doing is they've been strangling Social Security over many decades. Not, right now, even before the cuts of, Doge and everybody, Social Security was at a 50-year low in terms of staffing. So, and that's politicians' fault. They refuse to give Social Security resources to help you get your benefits, get the right check at the right time. Social Security has said, hey, we need to update the computer system so we can provide better customer service. And politicians said no. And why do they do this? Because they want Social Security and Medicare to give rotten service. So you can say, hey, they suck anyway. Let's just go ahead and give it over to your buddies on Wall Street. So Rachel, you've fallen for it. So yeah. So, all right, y'all take care of each other. That'll be it for today. I'll be back again tomorrow, and I'll answer some more questions there. Y'all